Okay, so we got two main things that we need to accomplish today. One is we need to get started on our research paper, and we'll do that in just a minute. And the other thing is we have 3 more sentence types to learn. First of all, let's talk about our papers. Turn to page 35 in your handbook. Okay, this is a model of what a 5-paragraph report looks like. So you can see right there in the middle where it says report body, that would be paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 when we're talking about a 5-paragraph paper. And that's really what you did this past week when you wrote your body of the whale paragraph. You wrote a report body, and that could easily be made into a 5-paragraph report by writing an introduction and a conclusion to go with it. We're not going to do that. I wanted you to practice those skills for making fused outlines and putting them together in a report. So for this research report we are going to start today, we will be writing an introduction and conclusion, but we're not going to do that this week. This time we're just going to be working again on the report body. So one really good way to go about writing a report is to write the middle of the report first, the report body with our 3 topics, and then once you've done that, you know what all information you've used, and you can write a really interesting introduction without repeating all of that information. Really, the introduction of a paper is pretty hard to write if you don't already have the body written. So we're going to make it a lot easier by writing the body of our report first, and then when we come back next time, we'll write the introduction. We'll talk about writing the introduction and conclusion, and you'll do that the second 2 weeks. That paper will be turned in at our last class before Christmas. So I can't believe we're already talking at this point about Christmas, but we are. So let's look at what goes into a report, and we'll have a more clear idea of where we're going with this paper. So when we do have an introduction to our paper, what we're going to do is use information in the paper that we didn't have room for in our report bodies, and that gives our readers a lot more interesting information to use. And also in the introduction we're going to state our 3 topics, and when we get to the conclusion we're going to kind of go just backwards from that. So this gives you an idea of where we're going and what our paper will look like when we get finished. Now tell me, each of you, what your research paper is about and what your 3 topics are. Molly, what are you doing?
I'm doing polar bears.
Okay.
Learning how big polar bears are. I forgot. How much meat a polar bear eats, and who are the polar bear's closest relatives?
Okay, so this is what you need to do, because those are very, very tiny little topics that you could have like two sentences about each, okay? So what you can write about is polar bear's body, because their size is part of that, right? That way you can still talk about their size. A polar bear's diet, all right? So when you're talking about how much meat they eat, you won't just talk about how much meat they'll eat, but you'll also talk about what kind of meat they eat and how they get it, right? So the polar bear's body, the polar bear's diet, and then The classification of polar bears really is probably something you can deal with in the introduction. That's not real involved there. So how about habitat? Do you have some information in some of your resources about the habitat? Where they live, like where they sleep, all the swimming that they do, habitat and behavior maybe, because their behavior and their habitat kind of goes together, right? They live in snowy places and they swim in the water. And how does that sound? Do you have some sources that would cover polar bear's body? Because really their size is quite impressive, but that's not the only amazing thing about them. They have hair that is, it looks like it's white, but apparently it's really not white. It's more like clear and it reflects the sun, so it makes it look like it's white.
Their skin's black. They have white fur.
Huh?
Their skin's black, but they have white fur.
Yeah, I think their hair is kind of translucent or something like that. And then, of course, then they've got other interesting features like their paws, you know, and their amazing mouth and their strength. They're very strong animals, you know. And their blubber, which is so important for allowing them to be able to live in the Arctic. So yeah, the body would be really good, and I'm sure that even if you're, I bet you some of those, how many books do you have? Do you have your 2 books?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure between the 2 of them and your article, you can find plenty of information that is interesting about their body. Then with their diet, that's another interesting thing, because I know they're really fond of seals. And what else do they eat? I'm not really sure. I know that they will dig down into the snow. They can, they'll dig down into seal dens and pull out the seal pups and eat them. I guess they fish probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of information you could do about their diet. And then, of course, a really interesting paragraph about their habitat. How do they survive in that cold, cold place? So those are all important things that you can talk about. Now, we're going to have 6 sentence types by the time we get through with class today. And you need to have at least 6 sentences in your paragraphs, okay? At this point, you girls are getting pretty old and your paragraphs should be kind of long, so we can't have any short paragraphs. So at least 6 sentences, and really you could do more than 6 sentences, but we're going to have 6 different sentence types and every one of them have to be used in every paragraph. Okay, so Molly, that's you. You might want to list, well, in a minute we'll list those. Sammy, tell us what you're writing about.
Whales.
Yay! Okay, now, yeah, I know you've just done a whales paper, and so this paper needs to be something different from what you just did, okay, because the point of it is to research. So what are you doing particularly about whales?
I'm doing beluga whales,
Okay.
blue whales, and gray whales.
Okay, and is there enough of a difference between each of those kinds of whales that you're going to be able to write a meaningful paper about them?
I think so.
Okay, because we've just done body of a whale, so you need to stay away from that as a topic. I mean, obviously you're going to have to describe those whales, body of a whale. Let's see, you'll have to describe their body somewhat. But those were killer whales. Let's see, we did body of a whale, and what else did you do in your whale paragraph? I can't really remember right now.
Migration.
Okay.
And history.
What was the third thing?
History.
History. Okay. Well, obviously you don't need to worry about that. Okay. So if you're going to do those 3 different whales, I guess what would be important? Let's see. Blue whales, are those the largest of all the whales? Huh? You don't know?
No, it is the largest.
Okay. So that what you can show between those 3, all whales are really amazing. So what you can show between those 3 different kinds of whales is what makes this particular type of whale unique, you know?
I know for the belugas, they're the ones that have like that bump on their head, and they use like echolocation. So that'll be the big difference for that one.
Okay, well, make sure you research these and study it well until you know. Now, I don't want like all of the stuff about the beluga whale to come out of one book and all of the stuff about the blue whales to come out of one book. You need to have a couple of sources for each of the kinds of whales. Do you have that?
Right now, I only have one book for each whale.
Okay, so see, there would be no way to do a fused outline that way if they were all each coming out of one source, right?
Could I like take an online article?
Absolutely. So for each of those topics, go and find an online article, and when you're making your fused outline, you will have what, a book for each one and a online source for each one. How about that?
Well, for the gray whale, I'll probably have 2 online sources because there really wasn't a good book for them.
Okay. So what's the difference? What do you know enough about them yet to know the difference between what a gray whale is and what a blue whale is? I don't.
Not really.
Is it the size? Okay, well, you're going to be finding that out, and I really like whales, and so I look forward to getting educated more about whales through your paper. So think about talking to, you know, and with me as your audience and trying to show what is unique about each of these kinds of animals. You could also talk about what is the same about them. Hopefully it's not just the size and color, and there will be other things to talk about, like where they tend to live. Okay, so let's go ahead and list our topics on our report organizer. If you'll turn to page 30 in your handbook.
Oh yeah, and National Geographic counts as like an internet or like article thing, right?
Yes, and that's a wonderful source. Oh, okay. Let me tell you about Wikipedia. Now, I don't know if, I can't remember if we've talked about this or not. Wikipedia,
We haven't.
We haven't, okay. Wikipedia can't be used as a source, but there is something that Wikipedia is very good for. Do you know what that's good for? Yes, Tammy.
Pictures?
Well, yes, they do have good pictures, that's true. But and the reason why colleges and high schools won't allow you to use Wikipedia as a source is because anybody can go in and change those articles, and they can say crazy things like Benjamin Franklin, you know, built the pyramids or something like that. It doesn't even have to be right. People can change those articles. But there is something that's really good about Wikipedia, and that is at the bottom of an article, if there's very much at all to know about that topic, there will be a whole list of things of articles that you can go to. Let me bring it up here on my share screen, and I will show you what I mean. All right. Can you see my internet screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to do gray whale. And so there's some pictures. It's pretty amazing. Gray whale spy hopping next to calf. Well, that's interesting. That might be something to look up. You can get really good information about things in Wikipedia. You just can't use it as a listed source. But if you go all the way down, oh, well, actually, look here. You see here in this little box that tells you what all the sections are in the article? Description, populations, life history, whaling. Okay, all the way down to number 10, it says references. So this will take you to nearly the end of the article, and look at that. You know what that is? That is a whole list of sources that you could go to read about gray whales. Isn't that amazing? And these are things you actually can use. So this is pretty interesting. First gray whale spotted south of the equator. Look at this. And it takes us right to the source. And look at that. Just like that, you've got all kinds of information that you can use, and it's legal to use it. That is the great thing about Wikipedia, right there. Now let's see what we can see about polar bears. Let's see. Polar bear. Okay. All right. Here's a nice picture of a polar bear. And if we go down to the bottom of this box always tells you what all the different parts are about that are on this article. And there's one there about hunting. I imagine that's about people. See, there's hunting and diet. Now, we can't use that article, but what we can do is go down to the actual article. Here's another way to do it.
National Geographic. No, that's a bearded seal. That's a baby in there.
We can go down here to the bottom, or either click on references and look at all those articles about polar bears. This is amazing. All right. Some of the articles are way too involved, like shifts. Well, this sounds interesting. Shifts in polar bear diet during the ice-free season in western Hudson Bay. That sounds pretty interesting right there. So I could just look around until I find something that looks like it might be useful for me. So do you all have any questions about that?
No. No.
Okay. So if you need more sources, feel free to go to Wikipedia, look at the references, and find something that would add some good information for you, okay?
Yeah.
Very, very useful. All right. Now, if you look on page 30, right there at the top, it's a really good idea when you're putting together a big project like a paper that is going to take a while, to have a place to organize all your information. And this doesn't have to be done on this official form. I have given you this official form in your PDF file, and you could always print those off from now and forever to use for organizing papers. It definitely doesn't have to be done on a paper that's printed up like this. One really good way of doing it is just to when you start a paper, get a spiral bound notebook, maybe even one of those that has pockets in it, and you can keep all of your information, have a front page that has this same information on it, and any notes that you take, you can keep in your spiral bound notebook, and everything stays together nice and neat. But one thing that's really distressing when you go to write a paper and it's almost time to turn it in, and you've been told to put together a works cited page, which is the bibliography, and you've taken your books back to the library and you can't find which book it was that you used. You're looking online at the library and you can't find it. So it's always good to have all of your sources written down in one place where you can always find it and you know where it is if you need it. So that's what we're going to do right here, and you're welcome to print one off at home if you want to and make a new one. Again, like I said, we have plenty. You can print as many of these as you like. So go ahead at the top and write your report subject. So it'll be polar bears for Molly and whales for Sammy. And then your 3 body paragraphs are your 3 topics. And so for Molly, I think we said body, diet,
and
habitat. Yeah.
For the citations, didn't something happen to EasyBib?
Something happened to it?
I remember someone in my class last year saying like you couldn't do it anymore.
Oh yeah, you can. No, it's still there, and we'll talk about EasyBib next time because EasyBib is a great resource, but you have to make some adjustments to it. They're still not formatting the, they've changed some things in MLA format, and EasyBib doesn't seem to have caught up with it yet. So, and then, okay, so Sammy, you have whales, gray whales, blue whales, and beluga whales?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know that song by Raffi, Baby Beluga?
No.
Okay. That's kind of a fun song. Okay. All right. So for the resources, you know, the beginnings of the books always have this information. And here's the general rule. If there's more than one city listed as the publisher, you list the city that's listed first, okay? And if there are more than one date, it means the book has been published several times, but the last date would be the one with the actual copy that you have in your hands. Does that make sense? Because if it says 1980 and then 1999, obviously that was the book that was published in 1999, not the one in 1980, right? Now, sometimes this information can be tricky. It's generally on the first and second page, but not always. So you kind of have to be a little bit of an investigator to do this. Are you able to find, we won't do all of these right now, but does it seem pretty easy to find that information that you have in your books there?
Yeah.
Okay. Every once in a while, some of this information will even be in the back of the book. Now, for your internet articles, if you have internet articles, which I'm sure you both will end up having internet articles, the page right next to it on page 31 tells you a lot of different things that you can use. And it's really not true, I need to take this sentence out, you won't have to worry about this. That's not true. Sometimes on EasyBib, when you put in even have the correct article, it'll leave things out and you have to find it and put it into your citation. So basically for internet articles, you list as much of this information as you can find. That's why I left it blank on the internet source. It just depends on the particular kind of page that you have, what you will be able to list for the internet article. So before you all go to take your break, I want to talk for a minute. You can finish that when you get home. You're going to be making a fused outline. Turn with me to page 28. Both have your package of colored sticky tabs here. Open them up. I love colored sticky tabs. They are so useful. They are one of the most useful items when you're working on a paper especially, but I use them for all kinds of things. So what they're useful for with a paper is marking your information in your sources without having to actually take the time to stop and write things down when you're in the information gathering stage. It's really good to be able to take notes, and when you start to make your fused outline, you definitely will be taking notes and writing things down. But when you're first gathering information, it's really helpful to be able to mark things and then come back later and find it and not have to search for what you found to start with. Also, sometimes, you know, if you print an article off the internet, or if you have your own books, you can always do highlighter, but you can't do that with a library book. So these are really better than highlighter because you don't have to go flipping through the book looking for it. These work great for your textbooks if you have information you need to learn for a test or that you need for your homework. They're great for everything, but they're especially great for writing papers. So we're going to use the middle three colors for our body paragraph. So body paragraphs are going to be orange, yellow, and green. Or if you want to come up with a different scheme, you can. The main thing is that you know what each of those things, each of those colors stands for. Just to practice here, why don't you pick up one of your sources, find some information in your book about that particular topic. So take an orange tab, and Molly, find something in one of your books about body. And what you want to do is stick a tab on the edge. Yes, Sammy?
Can I do the yellow one because I'm doing gray whales first,
Sure.
and those are my internet sources and I don't have them in front of me?
Absolutely. You just need to make sure that you know what the colors stand for, okay? This is a way of organizing your information and just making everything very clear. If we start out writing the paper with a clear idea of where we're going, things go so much better. And so this is one way of doing that. It's way different than the way I learned to write papers when I was your age, which was to get a whole bunch of library books from the library on whatever it was I had to write about, and then start randomly opening them and writing stuff down with really no clear idea of where I was going. That was a terrible way of writing a paper, and of course I never enjoyed it because it was so hard. I had no plan. This is having a plan, and having a plan just makes it easier. And then too, not having to try to remember everything and knowing that you're going to be able to find what you need when you need it is so helpful. And that's what colored sticky tabs and all of these organizational techniques will do for you. This is how I would do it. So if I were going to use this page in my handbook, if I was writing a paper and I wanted to be able to find it again, I would stick it right on the edge of the paper where the information is. That helps even more. And that way, when my book is closed, I can easily see where that information is. I don't have to go flipping through looking for it. It's sticking out on the side. And when I open the book, I know that it's going to be right where my sticky tab is, near where my sticky tab is. So I'm not searching around on the page looking for the information. You can even take it a step further and make it really useful by actually sticking not just one on the edge, but one actually on top of the information that you wanted to use. See how that works? It's great. Okay, so did each of you find some information?
I have two.
Good, okay. Molly, did you find something to mark?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, the next thing you would want to do, of course, is go on to your next source and take that same color of sticky tab and mark information about that same topic in another source. Yes, Sammy.
Right now, I only have one source for each
That's okay.
topic.
That's fine. And so you will just go when you find your articles online, and I would suggest, you know, typing that in Wikipedia and looking down at the bottom and finding maybe a couple of good sources about your subject. I want to know what spy hopping was.
Oh, I know.
What is it?
It's when like a whale brings its head out of the water to look around.
Uh-huh.
We went whale watching this summer, and I saw an orca do it. It was really cool.
Oh, that is so neat. Yeah, make sure you talk about that in the paper, because that's something I don't know anything about. Okay. And where was that? Where did you get to see orcas?
Canada.
Oh, wow. That's really neat.
We went on a cruise.
How fun. Okay. So then you pick the next topic and you pick a different color for the second topic, and you do the same thing. You find information in your source, stick it on the edge of the paper. If you want to make it even more easy to find, you can stick one right on top of the information on the page as well. But always make sure you've got the tab sticking out on the edge, because that's what makes it easy to find when you go to take your notes. This really makes a lot better use of your time when you're actually reading sources, because instead of having to stop and actually write things down, you just grab your sticky notes, stick it on the page, keep going. Anything that you think is interesting that you think you might want to use in your paper can be done. Now, while you're reading, you may come up with some information that isn't what your body paragraphs are about. And in that case, if it might be some background information you'd like to use later on for your introduction, or maybe some information you'd like to use for your conclusion. In that case, you can use one of the other two colors, as this is information that I'm not going to be using in my body, but I might want to find this again to use it in my introduction or my conclusion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so what you're going to be doing at home starting tomorrow is making a, let's turn to page 205. Now, that form that I gave you is not going to be, there's not enough spaces perhaps for all of the resources that you have, so you can print another one if you like, or you can turn it over on the back of a freshly printed one and keep writing things down on the back of it. Or you can write it on a piece of notebook paper. The main thing is to make sure you keep up with it and you know where it is. If you lose it, it wasn't any use to you, right? So it's always a good idea to have all of your stuff together. So tomorrow it says on day 1 to list your sources on your report organizer. You've started that, so you just need to finish it. You're going to be listing the rest of your sources. You're going to be going through your sources and finding the information that you need for your notes that you're going to make your fused outlines from, and writing, putting your sticky notes on it. So tomorrow, you won't be writing paragraphs or writing keyword outlines. Tomorrow, you're just going to be information gathering, okay? And marking. And then starting on, let's see, Thursday, you will start making your fused outlines for your first topic. Take notes from each of your sources and then make a fused outline just like we did for the whale paper, okay? And then you will, the next day, write a topic paragraph, and then the day after that, you're going to be working on topic 2. So the way it's going to work this time is you're going to do the fused outline one day, and then write the paragraph the next day. fused outline paragraph, fused outline paragraph, and take them each to your editor so that you can get them corrected. And you'll do one final draft all at once. Okay, so this time you're going to be writing a rough draft, taking it to your editor, doing the fused outline, writing another rough draft, taking it to your editor, fused outline, rough draft, taking it to your editor. And then you can do one document that has all the corrected paragraphs in it. Does that make sense? Okay, it's explained on your paper, on your assignment sheet. Just read it really carefully. Now, let's look at our new style stuff for the day. We've got 3 more sentence types to cover. So turn to page 58. Now, I'm going to save number 4 for the last one because it's definitely the most complicated and also the most fun. So let's look at number 5 first. We already know how to write a www.asia dress up, and we know how to write a because dress up, and you're going to continue to have www.asia dress ups and because dress ups as dress ups somewhere else in the sentence besides the first word, because now we're also going to have a www.asia.because sentence type. So you take those same words, when, while, where, as, since, if, although, and because. You can choose one of those and start a sentence with them. You don't have to have a sentence starting with each of them, and the because is lumped in now with the www.asia, not for dress ups, just for sentence types, okay? So from now on, you'll have one sentence that begins with a www.asia.because, and then you'll also have a www.asia dress up and a because dress up. So now we're getting a little more complicated. And what this does is it changes the structure of your sentences. And why do you think it's important to have different kinds of sentences in sentence structures? What's the point of that?
Like, so your reader doesn't get bored reading this pretty much the same sentences over and over again, give them some variety.
Exactly. You might have heard the saying, variety is the spice of life. Have you ever heard that?
No.
Okay. It's an old saying. Variety is the spice of life. Variety is also the spice of writing. And you're right. People start to get bored, and they don't even know why they're bored when they're reading something that all of the sentences are pretty much the same structure. And so what this does is help us to avoid the great crime in writing. The great crime in writing is, what do you suppose?
Making your reader bored?
Yes. We call it the B word. Yes. Sammy.
What if your reader's bored because you wrote about a really boring topic, even if you have a lot of sentence variety? Is that still a crime?
Well, you do always want to keep your audience in mind, right? So you can't always make everybody happy. But really, if somebody is an excellent writer, they can write about a topic that the person might not really be interested in, but they won't be bored reading it. I used to read Field and Stream sometime at work when I was working, and if I forgot to bring something to read during lunch, I would go looking for magazines, and a lot of times the only thing I could find was Field and Stream, which was all about hunting and fishing, which I have no personal interest in. And one day I read an article about turkey calling. Do you know that turkeys are very hard to hunt?
Yeah.
They are very smart, and they're very hard to catch. And so this was an article about how to use a turkey collar to turkey hunt. And you know, I sat there. I have no interest in hunting turkeys. I don't mind eating them. I sat there and read that whole article. It was so well written and fascinating. I learned all kinds of stuff about turkeys. I read all kinds of nature stuff. It was amazing. I don't even care about turkeys. So it could have been a really boring article, but it wasn't, because the writer knew how to write about something in an interesting way, about something I had no personal interest in. So that's a very good question, Sammy, and you can engage a writer whether they care about your subject or not if you write it well. How's that? That's a good thing to know, don't you think?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now the next thing we're going to talk about is the very short sentence. And let's see. Molly, you probably did these, I would suppose, last year. Did you in IEW? Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of unusual. I had one student, when I first started teaching this to other people's kids besides mine, I had a student one year he was a very good writer, and he loved all of the style stuff. But when we got to number 6 sentence opener, very short sentence, he balked about it. He did not want anything to do with it. He thought that it was ridiculous that you would intentionally write a very short sentence, because all of his sentences were very long and complicated, and they had all kinds of sentence openers and all kinds of dress ups. And he thought this was just terrible to write a very short sentence. But what is happening to your sentences now? You're adding all these dress ups, you're doing all these different sentence types. What's happening to your sentences as you add all of this stuff?
They're getting longer.
They're getting longer and longer generally, right? And so what happens is if you only have those kinds of sentences, it starts to create kind of a droning effect in your reader's mind. It's like the teacher's voice on the Charlie Brown videos. Do y'all remember how that sounded? Have you ever watched a Charlie Brown movie?
Yeah.
What did it sound like? So after a while, that's kind of how your writing will start to sound to your reader if every single sentence is long and complicated with lots of clauses and lots of phrases and lots of commas, okay? So this is the way we break it up. Variety is the spice of writing. We want a little bit of a punch every once in a while, at least once in a paragraph. So we're going to intentionally write a very short sentence, which is only 2 to 5 words. So here's some examples. The merchant left one servant with $10,000. He invested it. Isaac lay obediently on the altar. Abraham raised his knife. A 3-word sentence, a 4-word sentence. Love is everlasting. So when you put those kinds of sentences in a paragraph full of really long sentences, it has the effect of just a little punch. It kind of wakes your reader up, and that's really important. You don't want them to get sleepy from reading droning, structured sentences. All right, and if we have time, we'll do exercises for this. I do have some exercises about this, but I want to go right on to the number 4 opener, because these are the high dollar openers here. If you can do one of these sentences and you can do it correctly, you will be thought brilliant by your professors. And they are so much fun. Now, when I first started trying to do these intentionally, I thought they were really, really hard. And sometimes it can be hard. But I think y'all are up to it. And it just takes practice, just like anything else. So let's look at some correct number 4 openers. A number 4 opener is a verb that has an ing ending or a verb that has an ed ending. So here's a correct number 4 opener. Appearing over the horizon, the sun, oh, my circle's out of place. The sun rose majestically. So in that sentence, what's appearing over the horizon?
The sun.
Right. And so notice how there's a comma. That's a phrase there. It's actually a present participial phrase, but it really doesn't matter that you know that. Appearing over the horizon, comma, the sun. The thing after that comma has to be the thing that is doing the action. We like to say the thing after the ing has to be the thing that is doing the inging. So the sun is appearing. Look at the next one. Seated, he tried to catch his breath. Who is seated in this sentence?
He.
He. Notice there's a seated, comma. The very next thing, the subject, is right after the comma. Creeping along in the dark, the detective spied the thief on the dock. Who's creeping along in the dark?
The detective.
The detective. There's a comma, and then we have the subject of the sentence, the detective. Okay, all of those are correct. Let's look at one that's not correct. Go down to the next section. See, the way it happens is after that phrase, whatever comes after that phrase, your brain's going to attach them together. That's the way your brain is wired. Pretty fascinating. So look at this next one. Creeping along in the dark, the dock was a spooky place. What does it sound like is creeping in that sentence? Uh-oh. Have I lost y'all again? Oh, I thought you were frozen. Creeping along in the dark, the dock was a spooky place. What does it sound like is creeping in that sentence?
Spooky.
Huh?
Spooky. I don't know why. I know dock is what you want me to say, but I don't know, it just sounds like spooky.
Okay, well, creeping along in the dark, the dock, well, something. Spooky is not a thing, okay? Right? So it sounds like the dock is creeping. Okay, walking along the beach, the sun rose majestically over the horizon. If you were just reading that and you came upon it, have you ever read something and you had to read it over 2 or 3 times to try to figure out what the author was trying to say? Has that ever happened to you? Probably because they did something like this. We know the sun can't be walking along the beach. So something is missing there, and it's the subject of the sentence. Whoever it is not there. Who likes to walk on the beach?
Not really.
Okay. Do you like to walk on the beach, Molly?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do Molly. How about this? Walking along the beach, Molly saw the sun rise majestically over the horizon. Molly was what was missing in that sentence. Okay, now there's some things that can also be wrong because they're not really verbs, even if they look like verbs. Like, singing was her greatest joy. Singing, in that case, is the subject of the sentence. It's a thing, singing. And so it might look like it, but we know it's not, and a clue that it's not is because there's no comma that was needed there, okay? Also, during does not count as one of these. During is a preposition. So let's see if we have time to do just a couple of exercises. Turn to page 106. Let's look at page 106. These are definitely the most challenging. And if you can do one of these, it makes your writing sound so very sophisticated. And your English professors will be amazed because they don't even expect college students to be able to do one of these correctly, and mostly they don't. All right, so this is a little set of sentences, and you might finish it. We won't be able to finish it in class probably, but you can finish this later because it's very interesting. Martha Berry started Berry College here in Georgia, and this is the story about how that happened. Martha Berry was from Rome, Georgia, which is located in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. Okay, if we were doing a paper about Martha Berry and we noticed we didn't have a number 4 in this paragraph, we could find one of the verbs and make a number 4 out of it. And so let's see if we do this with number 1. Located in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, Rome, Georgia was the home of
Martha Berry.
Martha Berry. Write that in. Okay, let's do number 2. Martha, I'm trying to get this set in your brain, and then it'll be easier for you to make your own. Sometimes you can just go back and look at your own sentences and figure out how to make one of them into a number 4, because any sentence you write can be reconfigured as any other type of sentence. Martha lived there with her rich parents, 7 siblings, and 3 cousins. She would sometimes slip away to a quiet cabin nearby to read and write. As in this sentence, sometimes you can take 2 sentences and put them together with a number 4, okay? So we're going to change this one to, living there with her rich parents, 7 siblings, and 3 cousins, Martha would
sometimes slip away to a quiet cabin nearby to read and write.
Yes. And you can just put sometimes slip away for now. If you want to put the rest of it later, you can. Okay. Number 3, she met some of the poor rural children at the cabin one day. Martha was shocked to learn that they did not attend school or Sunday school. Okay, so here's 2 sentences. We're going to put them together using a number 4. Meeting some of the poor rural children at the cabin one day, Martha
was shocked to learn that they did not attend school or Sunday school.
Right. So for now, you can just put Martha was shocked. And you could always put the whole thing, but we're just not going to take the time to do that right now. She found they did not even know common Bible stories. Martha shared some of the stories with the boys, which delighted them. Okay, so let's see. Molly, why don't you read the next one and, read all of that and tell us how you would finish that.
Finding they did not even know common Bible stories, Martha shared some of the stories with the boys, which delighted them.
Right. Perfect. So for now, you can just put Martha shared some of the stories. Okay, Sammy, why don't you do the next one?
Martha, should I read the original things first?
Yeah, do that.
Martha invited them to return the next Sunday with their brothers and sisters. She did not know that was the beginning of a great project that would become the Berry Schools.
Okay.
Inviting them to return the next Sunday with their brothers and sisters, she did not know that was the beginning of a great project that would become the Berry Schools.
Right. Perfect. Okay. Molly, do the next one for us.
The Sunday schools outgrew the cabin. It had to move to a larger building, then to 4 separate locations. Outgrowing the cabin, the Sunday school had to move to a larger building than the 4 separate locations.
Perfect. We won't write them down right now. Let's just go ahead and finish all of them out, and you can finish them later if you'd like. Okay, Sammy, do the next one.
Martha soon dreamed of a school for poor mountain children. She chose as her motto, educating the head, the heart, and the hand.
Okay.
Dreaming of a school for poor mountain children, Martha chose the motto, educating the heart, head, the heart, and the hand.
Great. That's super. And you know, when you're doing your sentences this way, if you want to change them a little bit, that's fine, because after all, when you're writing your paper, it's your paper, right? You don't have to stick with all the exact same wording. Okay, do the next one for us, Molly.
He started with a boarding school for boys where they learned to study, work, and serve others. Martha later added one of the girls.
Okay. Okay, so how would you put those together?
Boarding school for boys where they learned to study, work, and serve others. Martha later added one of the girls.
Okay, super. All right, Sammy.
Martha used her fame wisely. She helped develop similar schools for rural children all over Georgia. Using her fame wisely, Martha helped develop similar schools for rural children all over Georgia.
Great. Okay, Sammy, number 10. I mean, Molly, number 10.
The school continued to grow to include 30,000 acres. When Martha died, the various schools included a boys' school, a girls' school, and a 4-year college, continuing to grow to include 30,000 acres. When Martha died, the various schools included a boys' school for girls, a school and a 4-year college. Okay,
so notice how I stuck when Martha died at the end, because if you put Martha at the beginning of that, it doesn't go together anymore. Continuing to grow to include 30,000 acres. Berry schools included a boys' school, a girls' school, and a 4-year college when Martha died, because it was the Berry schools that were continuing to grow, right?
Yeah.
So we stick Martha at the end so it doesn't confuse our readers. Okay, and the very last one, Sammy.
Martha blazed a trail for education in Georgia. She showed how one person can make a difference. Today, Berry College continues as a living monument to Martha Berry's vision.
Okay.
Blazing a trail for education in Georgia, Martha showed how one person can make a difference.
Great.
Today, Berry College continues as a living monument.
Super. Okay, that's great. You know, I actually had an uncle and an aunt that graduated from Berry High School, which is pretty neat. So, and Berry College is still continuing strong. So, very fascinating story. Okay, so that's how you go about doing number 4s. I don't think you're going to have any trouble with the very short sentences and the number 5, since we've already been practicing number 5. So we got some sea turtle ones for number 5, and we on page 108, and we've got some things for number 6 opener practice on 109. We might do those in class later. Plus we have some other ones that we didn't get to last week. Exercises, fun exercises. Any questions about what your job is this week?
No.
All right, if you run into any kind of problems, be sure and get in touch with me. So when we meet for class next time, you'll have finished your 3 body paragraphs, and we'll be talking about the introduction and conclusion and works cited page, okay?
Okay.
All right, girls. Thank you, and I'm going to try to get this recording fixed up, and maybe Julia can watch it too. All right. Bye-bye. Have a fun Halloween.